Ardram jwalati jyotirhamasmi Jyotir jwalati brahmahamasmi Yohamasmi brahmahamasmi Ahamasmi brahmahamasmi Ahamevaham mam juhomi swaha. Melting into the light, I am the light that shines. The light shines, the light which is Brahman. That which I am is nothing but Brahman. I exist, and I exist as Brahman. I myself offer myself into the infinite light which is myself. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So the topic of my talk this morning is, and I don't remember the exact words, but Brahman revealed in everyday experience. Brahman revealed in everyday experience. So let me begin by the question, why is it that we don't experience Brahman? Why don't we experience Brahman? Brahman, that is, spirit, is the eternal reality. That's self-luminous. It's the only reality. It's consciousness itself. It's luminosity itself. And so why don't we experience it? That's the mystery. The experience is not Brahman. The experience is that we don't experience Brahman. Brahman is the only existence, that which is, the only thing that is. It's Satyam, that which is truth, which means that which is. The universe is just an appearance. So why don't we see Brahman? The only truth, the only reality, the only existence, which is self-luminous, which is eternal, which is the one thing that's undeniable in the universe. You know, most of you know the Vedantic statement, the Upanishadic statement found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Neti Neti Atma, not this, the self is not this, not this, not this, not this. So when you negate everything that can be negated, the one thing that remains that can never be negated is Brahman. So why don't we see that? Why don't we see the one thing that which is real, the one thing which is true, the one thing which is eternal, the one thing that can never be denied in any state of consciousness, whether waking, dream, deep sleep, unconsciousness, the one reality which can never be denied, which is there in life and in death, and all of the changes that we go through, the one thing that endures. And actually it doesn't endure, it just is. To endure means that somehow you make it through various changes. Well, it's not somehow struggling to make it through various changes. It is. Simply is. And yet we don't see it. That's the mystery. We see all sorts of things. We see all sorts of changing phenomena. And yet we don't see the one thing that is. But not only that, but Brahman is said to be who we are. This Ayamatma Brahma, this very self is Brahman. We all know that we exist. We all are aware of our own existence. And we are by our very nature Brahman. We all know ourselves, and yet we don't know that we are that reality. So this is the great mystery of life, that we don't know that one thing which should be known, that one thing which is the only obvious fact in the midst of all of these non-obvious appearances which come and go, which are just, as they say, just like a figment of the imagination practically. Just a thin film of some sort of mistaken something that we're seeing in place of the reality itself. It's like holding up a thin a piece of saran wrap or something over the sun, between us and the sun, and saying, I can't see the sun. But it's even, even less understandable than that, because the piece of saran wrap and the sun have the same levels of existence. But in this case, Brahman and the world don't have the same level of existence. They're not at all the same. And so, again, that's the great mystery, and that's the great tragedy of our lives. That which we are is existence itself, without any change, without birth or death. And yet we think ourselves subject to birth and death. That which is, and which we are, is consciousness itself. And yet our own consciousness seems to be such a dim light, such a dim and flickering light, which seems to go out in deep sleep and just barely flickers in sleep, and doesn't work so well even in the waking state. And our nature is joy itself. And yet we find that our lives are little bits of joy and a lot of unhappiness amidst the many, among the little bits of joy that we have. So this is the great mystery of life, not that Brahman is our nature or that we are eternal, etc. The mystery is that we don't know that which is obvious, the most obvious fact. I recently translated, and it's now being published in India, a small book that even few Vedantists in India have heard of. It's called Advaita Makaranda, which means the Nectar of Non-Duality. It's a wonderful little book. It's only 28 verses. The first verse is just a salutation verse, as most scriptures in India begin with, and the last verse is just eulogy. And so it's really only 26 verses, and yet it's a wonderful text. And one of the unique things about that text is, one of the unique things about the text is that unlike some Vedantic works which are polemical, arguing against other schools of philosophy and so forth, and some texts which go into the details of the philosophy in order to explain the nature of the individual and the nature of the cosmic and the nature of the universe. This just, the main point of this scripture is to show how in the midst of our everyday experience, we are experiencing reality itself. But even that we don't see. We're experiencing the reality right now. And yet that also we experience it without experiencing it. We experience it without knowing that we are experiencing it. It's like an example that I often use. Those of us who wear glasses, we're used to looking through the glasses at everything. So the first thing that we see are our glasses, and yet after a while we forget that we're wearing glasses. So much so that sometimes we ask others, well, where did I put my glasses? And we're wearing them. I had never, since I was a latecomer to glasses, just a few years I've been wearing glasses. It hadn't happened to me until about a year ago, or even less than that. It was just several months ago. I was looking everywhere for my glasses, high and low. My God, I'm usually so careful with my glasses, and I always put them where I will find them. And I looked everywhere, and then suddenly, oh my God, here they are. So we're like that. We're like that. The most obvious reality, which is the foundation of all of our experience, the foundation of our very sense of self, the foundation of our experience of the world, the foundation of everything, the most obvious fact, that's the one thing that we're not seeing. It's right there in the midst of all of our experience, and yet we don't see it. So, the topic today is about that, about how it is that which seems so inaccessible to us is the most accessible thing and is being seen by us right now. So first let me begin with a classic example with an overlay of John Dobson's addition to the analogy. Many of you knew John Dobson. He lived here at the Society for many years until he passed away, 4 years or so ago, 4 or 5 years ago, as while I was in India sometime. A long-time Vedantin and a scientist by training and love also. The classical explanation, the classical metaphor, which you most of you have heard is of the snake and the rope. We see a snake in the twilight. We don't see it clearly, or we would see that it's a rope. We see a rope in the twilight. We don't see it clearly, or we would recognize, oh, there's a rope lying there. But maybe we see it out of the corner of our eye, or we see it in half light, so we're not sure what it is, and we think that it's a snake. And that's happened to some of us. It's happened to me. As a kid especially, and even as a young adult, I loved snakes, and was always out looking for snakes. But nobody wants to be surprised by a snake. And so even me, though I loved snakes and looked for snakes, when suddenly I saw one out of the corner of my eye right there, I got a fright. And oftentimes it would be either a stick or a rope. So the analogy is that we see a rope without really seeing it well, and we project the sight of a snake onto it. And of course we jump, we scream if we are screamers, we run if we are runners, we faint if we are fainters. But we have a reaction of real fear, as if it were a real snake. All of the reactions that we would have if it were a real snake, the internal reactions. But it never was a snake. It was always a rope. It never had the potential to kill us. It was always only a rope. And so that analogy is used, that metaphor is used, to explain our situation. The reality is Brahman. The only reality is Brahman, pure spirit, luminous consciousness, beyond time, space, and causation, joy itself, timeless, spaceless. And yet we see this world and myself within this world instead. I see all of this, including this, and my mind and everything that I see, internal and external, I see that instead of Brahman. So that's like seeing the snake on the rope. I should see Brahman itself. No inside, no outside, no in between. Just and not even the word Brahman or the thoughts about Brahman, just the immediate experience of non-dual reality, which is perfection itself, beauty itself, love itself, joy itself, existence itself. But instead of that, I see all of this vision of this individual in confrontation with this world and all of these scary people seated in front of me. And so that's what I see instead of the reality. And so that's like, they say in non-dualistic Vedanta, like seeing the snake in the rope. Of course, I should mention here, it's not pertinent to the subject, but it's also possible to see a snake and think it's a rope. And that can be even scarier. If you see a rope, you see a snake and think it's a rope, and then you go to handle it and suddenly realize, oh, that's not the handleable rope that I thought it was. That's really scary. But again, that's mistaken perception. And so John Dobson said on top of that, very good Vedantic truth that he drew out of the analogy, and that is that if you see a rope and take it for a snake, the rope has dimension. If you see a 3-foot rope, you don't see a 12-foot Burmese python. If you see a rope that's half-inch in diameter, you don't see an anaconda with this much diameter, 8 to 10 inches of diameter. You see a 3-inch snake with half-inch diameter, which means what? It means you're seeing the snake, seeing the rope. You're just seeing it in the form of a snake. But you're seeing the rope itself. You're seeing its dimensions. You're seeing the 3-foot length. You're seeing the half-inch diameter. So you're seeing the rope, but you're mistaking it for a snake. But without seeing the rope, there wouldn't be any snake to see. And so our situation here is the same. We're seeing Brahman. There's nothing but Brahman to see. There's no one but Brahman to be the seer, nor anything to be seen but Brahman. And yet, I project this seer and this seen on top of the whole thing. Oh, we oftentimes, when speaking about and thinking about non-dualistic Vedanta, we think in terms of, well, there's the Atman, and then there's Brahman, and there's a oneness between the Atman and the Brahman. Atman is the self inside, and Brahman is the reality outside. No. That's taught in Vedanta, but that's for our childishness. There's no inside and there's no outside. All of this arises together. This body, this world, this mind, all of it rises together. It's not that I see an outside and an inside. I make in my own mind and my own understanding a distinction between inside and outside. There's no Atman inside and Brahman outside. There's only one reality, which for convenience sake, when we're speaking and using words, we call Atman or Brahman. That's the same thing. You see how strange it is. What a world means, we think that the world means that there's this world, this loka, this world, jagat, and I'm inside of the world. No, that's not what we experience at all. We never experience a world without myself. We can't experience a world without myself. I can't experience a world without this body and the world extending out beyond it. We see it all as a unity, but we mistake it to be a duality, an inside and an outside. And why do we make the distinction of an inside and an outside? Because I've identified with my nerve endings, the tactile endings in my skin. When Swami Vivekananda in Northern California was talking about the oneness of all existence and how I, the individual, am one with the universe. And so a man in the audience said, well, Swamiji, if I'm one with everything, then what's the difference between me and a cabbage? And Swamiji said, stick a knife in your leg and you'll see the line of demarcation. That is, you stick a knife in your leg and it hurts. You stick a knife in the cabbage, it doesn't hurt. So you say, oh, this is me, and that's not me. No, that's silly. I've made an artificial distinction. The tactile sense is only one of my 5 senses. Why should I say that I end where my skin ends, where the tactile sense ends? No, the whole universe is revealed in my consciousness at the same time, the same way that this body is revealed, and so there's no inside or outside. So again, that idea is, coming back to the main idea I was developing right now, and that is that we are seeing Brahman right now, just as we see the rope through the snake. We see the dimensions of the rope through the snake. We're just misidentifying it, and so we're seeing Brahman right now. So in this, as I mentioned, there's this text, the Advaita Makaranda, a beautiful text, very short, and that points in, not in every verse, but in a number of the verses, it points to how we're seeing Brahman right now in everyday experience. Because we are. Just as when we see the snake, we're actually seeing the rope. It shines through our experience every moment. It's shining through everything that we see, everything that we do, everything that we experience. And it's just that we don't know what to look for, or we're not looking for it, or we don't recognize it when we see it. So let me mention the first verse and the meaning. It's not actually, it's the second verse in the text, but the first verse which is pertinent to the topic. I'll say the whole verse and then come back and explain it part by part. It begins, Ahamasmi sadabhami karachinaham apriyaha brahmaivaham atasiddham satchidananda lakshanam. That says, ahamasmi, I exist. I exist. As Swami Vivekananda used to say that the most amazing truths are the most simple. And you think, well, okay, Swami, I came all the way here to Hollywood using up gas and spending my time to hear that I exist. That I already knew. But that's one of the most fantastic facts that ever confronts us, the fact that I am. We are used to everything that we do is based on top of that sense that I am. If I'm not, then I don't experience anything. I don't do anything. Then I'm not. There's no question of a me to do, to experience, or anything. I'm out of the picture. But that's an extremely important and amazing fact, and it's the perception of, it's the direct intuition of Brahman itself. When I was a kid, I think I was 13, yes, I had to be 13, I read a book by Ray Bradbury. Some of you may know Ray Bradbury. He wrote Martian Chronicles and other books that were many of his books were science fiction, but they always had some sort of moral component to them. And so one of his books, which was not science fiction, was Dandelion Wine. And the title Dandelion Wine is not pertinent to the part of the book that I want to talk about now. The central revelation in the book, for there's about a 12-year-old boy. I was 13, and I thought, oh my, I've already missed, I'm already late for this experience that this boy had when he was 12. The 12-year-old boy, it was about his summer vacation, when his family was making dandelion wine, which was just sort of a peripheral to the actual story. He suddenly realized one day that I exist. And he went into a sort of ecstasy, that I exist, I am. And when I read that as a kid, the kid's mind, the child's mind, is very fresh, very receptive, very perceptive, and not colored by a lifetime of ups and downs and good and bad experiences and disappointments and frustrations and all of that. So when I read it, that made a very deep impression on me. This idea that the boy just suddenly realized one day, I exist, and went into a kind of ecstasy. And I couldn't quite understand what it was, but I knew that that was important. I knew that there was some sort of revelation there. I knew that this was not just, not just an ordinary story. It took some years before I understood the point of it. That yes, if we become aware of the sense that I am, then that's the direct perception of my true self. Because amness is the nature of the Atman itself. The Atman is the only thing that is. And again, when I talk about Atman and Brahman, I'm talking about the same thing. So if I switch back and forth, you make the translation in your own mind. So the Atman is all that exists. It is existence itself. It is amness itself. So my experience of I am, that's the direct experience of the Atman itself. And yet, I think I am and just pass on to other things. No, if I can hold on to that, I'm holding on to Brahman itself. I'm holding on to the Atman itself. So now let me go forward with the verse and then I'll come back to this. The second foot of the verse, a Sanskrit verse has 4 feet. The second foot is, the second half of the first foot. Ahamasmi, I am. Sadabhami, I always shine. I always shine. This I'll come back to later. Kadachi na hamapriyaha. Never am I not dear. That is, my own existence is the experience of dearness. That also I'll come back to later. Brahmaivaham atasiddham. Thereby, by these 3 statements, I am, I shine, and I'm never not dear to myself. By these 3 statements, it says, Brahmaivaham atasiddham. It is proved that I am Brahman itself. Satchidananda Lakshanam, which has the nature of existence, consciousness, and bliss itself. That bhami, I shine, that's the consciousness aspect of reality. The fact that I am conscious, that's another proof that I am the Atman. The Atman is consciousness itself. There's no consciousness outside of the Atman. And I am conscious. That's an extraordinary fact. And then I'm dear to myself. I'll come back to that also. I'll come back to all 3 of these and explain them more. But the one I am dear to myself, you may say, well, no, Swami, there are many people. Sometimes I hate myself, or some people commit suicide because they hate themselves so much. No one ever committed suicide because they hate themselves. And no one who says, I hate myself, really hates their existence. They hate the contradictions in their own life or things that they have done. They don't hate their self-existence. That's impossible. So I'll come back to that. But again, and I'll come back to all parts of this verse, but let me go off on an important tangent which is necessary to come back to it. You all have heard of Rene Descartes, the famous French philosopher and mathematician. He was primarily a mathematician, secondarily a philosopher. And those of you, which probably includes all of you, who's ever studied any geometry in high school, remember the Cartesian coordinates, the x and y axis. Those are Cartesian coordinates named after Descartes, Rene Descartes. And so he was primarily a mathematician, but he came to philosophy, became a philosopher, and thought that, well, in geometry, we have axioms, which are the accepted truths, what are considered the obvious truths of geometry, the facts of geometry. And on the basis of these axioms, we develop theorems, that is, theories. And then those theories we prove on the basis of the axioms. We use the axioms to prove the theorems. And we use other theorems that have already been proven also to prove further theorems. And so that's the way geometry is built up. It's built up by taking obvious facts, those which are accepted facts, obvious in experience. It wasn't until the 19th century that some mathematicians showed that some of the ideas in Euclidean geometry were not obvious, but the accepted view was at Descartes' time that the axioms are accepted in experience, and then theorems built on top of that. So he said, why can't we do that in philosophy? For 2,000 years, more than 2,000, in his time for 2,000 years, or a little more, philosophers had been arguing about philosophy and would never reached any conclusion. For whatever philosophy a philosopher has developed, there are other philosophers who say, no, that's not right because of this here. And then somebody else comes along and says, no, that's not right because of this. And no, that's not right because of this. So unlike geometry, philosophy never comes to many certain conclusions. So he thought, why is that? So let me examine my experience and make a philosophy that is as solid as Euclidean geometry. I'll find those things in my experience which can't be doubted, the axioms of experience, and on top of that, I will develop a further philosophy, proving it on the basis of these axioms of experience. So he began by doubting everything. What do I know for sure? What is certain in my experience? And so he looked at his experience and said, well, now there's an external world. Am I sure that there's an external world? And am I sure about the external world, about the nature of it? And he said, no. Why? Because I see the external world through my senses. The external world is revealed through these instruments. And I know that my instruments can be faulty. And if my instruments are faulty, then my idea of the external world is faulty. And so I can't take the external world for granted. I can't take it as an axiomatic existence. Because I may have faulty senses from birth and I may be seeing a false world. Then he thought, well, what about the mental world? That's more subtle, that's more certain. And then he thought, no. How do I know that I'm not insane? How do I know that I'm not hallucinating? I can't be sure. I don't know that I'm not hallucinating. I don't know that my mind is working. There's some forms of insanity which are characterized by the insane person thinking that I alone am thinking right and everybody else is crazy. And so I can't be sure that my mind is okay. So I can't take that as axiomatic either. And then he thought, but I'm doubting the external world, I'm doubting the mind, what else is left? But in the midst of my doubting the external world and doubting the mental world, I'm present as the doubter. I can't doubt myself because I'm present in the midst of the doubt. I can say, okay, now maybe I don't exist. I can doubt that I exist. No, I'm there in the midst of the doubt. So the doubt is canceled by the fact of my existence in the midst of the doubt. So he said that's the one thing that is axiomatic. And so he came up with his famous statement, which most of you have heard, maybe all of you have heard, cogito ergo sum. I think, and therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Now he came to an extraordinary truth, but he fell short of the real truth. The reason he fell short of the real truth was that he had nothing in his background in Western thinking to understand that there was a distinction between consciousness and existence, not between consciousness and existence, but consciousness and existence, between those two, and thinking and the external world. In Western thought, it has always been thought that the highest part of a human being is the thinking capacity. And there's nothing beyond thinking. And in the West, even today, when Western thinkers, uninfluenced by Indian thought, speak in terms of consciousness, they're speaking about the operations of the mind, conscious processes of the mind. They're not speaking of consciousness itself because there's no idea that consciousness is a reality in itself. There's the idea that consciousness is just something that's sort of produced by the cellular structure and the molecular structure of the brain. You get matter in complex enough structure and then it secretes consciousness. No, that's contrary to all of our experience. That's a ridiculous idea. It's a stupid idea. It's not even a childish idea. Children are much smarter than that. As well, the stupidest philosophy. It's ridiculous, completely contrary to experience. The materialist will say, oh no, matter is the only thing. I just heard on the radio the other day, NPR, that arguments about this. There were two Indian scientists, including Deepak Chopra, arguing against some other scientists who were supporting the idea of materialism. Materialism is, again, it would be an insult to children to call it a childish philosophy. It's ridiculous. So and I'll explain why in a moment, but Descartes, what he should have said was, I am, sum, ergo cogito. I am, therefore I can think or not think, depending on my state. I can either think or not think, but it's not my thinking that proves that I am. It's not my doubting that proves that I am. It's the fact that I am is self-evident. I am is self-evident. Everything else happens in the sense of I am. My doubting, my thinking, my perceiving the external world, my seeing the sun, the moon, looking through a telescope and seeing distant galaxies, all of that is founded in the sense of I am. So what do I know for sure? And unfortunately, Descartes couldn't come to this because, again, he didn't have the conceptual tools, what to speak of experiential tools, but he didn't have the conceptual tools to come to this. What I know is, without a doubt, is that I am. I know that I am. So I am. That's axiom number one. But in that statement comes axiom number two. I know that I am means that I know that I am. So I am, and I experience myself as a knower. I know and I am. Those two facts are the basic facts of my existence. And those are the direct perceptions of the self, of the Atman, of Brahman. Direct intuitions of it. It's like seeing the length and the diameter, cross-sectional diameter of the rope through the snake that I'm imagining. Everything that I know, everything that I experience is based on these two facts. I am. I am. And I know that I am. Cogito ergo sum. It's not cogito ergo sum. It's not that I think, therefore I am. I know that I am finished. That's it. And everything else is built on top of that. And so there is one place where I'm directly aware of the Atman. So when this verse says, ahamasmi, I exist, that's an extraordinary fact. If there's a meditation, there's a term in Sanskrit. It's not important that you remember the term, but I'll mention it. It's aham graho upasana. The aham graha upasana. Upasana meaning meditation, which is aham grahana. That is grasping the I, grasping the letter I, the first person pronoun. Grasping the sense of I, the meditation which grasps. Now that use of that technical term, aham graho upasana, that's used for different types of meditation, but I think that it should be reserved for this particular meditation, which is, I have the sense that I am. This is a wonderful meditation which anyone can do, but it's hard to start it. It shouldn't be. It should be the easiest thing, but it's hard because we're not used to thinking in these terms. But because it's so naturally easy, it becomes easy after a short time. And that is, I sit and try to just feel the fact that I am. Not I'm a man or I'm a woman, not I'm tall or I'm short, not I'm ugly or not ugly, not that I'm fat or skinny, not that I'm a teacher or a student or whatever. Just the fact, simple fact that I am. And so when you try to do that, when you try to just hold on to or you try to grasp the bare fact that I am, you find that thoughts are arising, you have the feeling, a sensation of the body's presence, it's sort of floating. But after a while you realize none of that matters. In the midst of all of it is the bare fact that I am. No definition, just I am. If you practice that, if you begin to get a feeling for it and just begin to find that, no, that's something that I can hold on to. In the beginning you don't know, well, what am I doing? Trying to feel that I am. Well, so what? Or what do I do it? How do I do it? No, if you try it and you begin to get a feeling for it, with practice, strange things happen. As you hold on to the sense of I am, then you begin to feel that the body is floating. You have the sensation of the body, while even when your eyes are closed, you have the feeling of the body's presence. You begin to realize that the I am is not inside of the body, and the I am is me. That's who I am, is I am. And so that I am is not inside of the body. That sense, the fact that I am is not inside the body is floating in the I am. The body is floating in the sense of I am. My thoughts are arising in the sense of I am, all of my thoughts. Not only that, the perception of the external world is floating in the sense of I am. Swami Vivekananda says that it's not the sun that illumines me. Of course, he would admit that the sun is illumining this body as physical objects. But he says, it's not the sun who is illumining me, it's I who illumine the sun. I open my eyes and say, "Oh sun, you exist." It's the light of my awareness which gives existence to the sun. The sun itself is floating in that sense of I am. And as you go with that, you begin to feel that this is the opposite of egotism. Egotism is based on comparison, etc. This is not comparison, this is taking away all comparison, seeing that the I am is the basis of existence itself. You begin to feel that the I am is not personal. It's not me, Swami Atmarupananda, with a personal history and all of that. No, the I am is a cosmic fact. And then you begin to understand the statement in the Torah and the Jewish part of the Bible. God says, I am that I am. I believe he says to Moses, I am that I am. The I am is who I am, but it's what existence itself is. There's nothing outside of the I am. And so you begin to understand that. And you begin to feel that the I am within me is the I am within everyone, and the I am within the universe itself. And so, again, it cuts at the very root of egotism. So that's when, aha must me, I exist. And that's why this boy had the sense of ecstasy when he suddenly realized, I exist. And he began to dance and run around in this joy, the sense that I am. Yes. And I know that I am. Saurabh Hami, I always shine. In the waking state, it's my shining. That is, shining the light of consciousness, the light of awareness. Again, in the West, we're used to thinking of awareness as mental processes, the parts of our mental processes that are conscious. That's consciousness. Mental operations that are conscious. No. That was one of the great contributions of ancient Indian thought. From the time of the Upanishads, it was formulated clearly, but it's evident even in the early part of the Vedas. The consciousness is a reality itself. Consciousness is the reality. It's the light which illumines all experience. It's the light in which all experience arises. And so, Saurabh Hami, I'm always shining. Whether I'm awake, or whether I'm asleep, whether I'm in deep sleep, whether I'm so-called unconscious, in all states, that shining is present. It's just that in deep sleep, we call it deep sleep, dreamless sleep, because the mind is no longer operating. But the self is there, still shining. That's why when I wake up, I think, oh my God, I slept so peacefully, I slept so beautifully. I didn't know anything. Oh, it was wonderful. If you had not existed, you wouldn't wake up saying that, oh, I slept so beautiful I didn't know anything. The fact that you know that you didn't know anything shows that there is a subtle memory left from the experience of not knowing anything. So you are present there in the midst of not knowing. The same with unconsciousness. And in dreaming, of course, it's obvious that the dream is appearing within your consciousness. But this world also is appearing within the consciousness of each one of us. Where do I experience you? I experience you within my consciousness. Nowhere else. There's nowhere else for me to go to experience you, to experience the world, to experience the sun, the moon, the stars. All of it I experience within myself. So ahamasmi, I exist. Sarabhami, I shine. Karachi naham apriyaha. There's never a moment when I am not dear, that is dear to myself, that my existence is not dearness itself. Again, as I said, that the suicide doesn't commit suicide because they hate themselves or they hate existence. It's because they can't bear the noise in the mind, the contradictions in their life, and they have no other way they can think of to shut it off except by ending their life. But even then it doesn't end. It doesn't end because consciousness is not subject to birth and death. Birth and death, life, birth and suicide or any other kind of death happens within consciousness itself. And so the person who says, even the person who's not suicidal, but who says, oh, I hate myself, no, they don't hate their existence. In fact, the very fact that they say, I hate myself, shows that they love the ideal, because they're judging the behavior of the psychophysical being against what they think they should be. But what they should be is what they are. That is the infinite, perfect, luminous, all-joyous self. It's just that they're looking at the wrong things, focusing on the wrong things. And so there's never a moment when I am not dear. That is the true I. And Brahmaivaha matasiddham. By this, the fact that I am Brahman is proven. That is, because of the last foot, Satchidananda Lakshanam. By this, the fact that I am Brahman is proven because I am of the nature of Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, or joy. So existence, I am. Consciousness, always I shine. Bliss, I'm never not dear to myself. And so in these three things, the fact of my being Brahman is revealed in direct experience. And we can hold on to, it's easiest to hold on either to the fact that I am or to consciousness. To try to hold on to dearness, it escapes you. Dearness is not easy to hold on to. But if you hold on to the sense of I am, you find that joy is spontaneous. That the sense of I am, that brings joy itself. And if you can hold on to the idea of just consciousness, the idea that I am the witness, I am the consciousness in which everything arises, that also brings joy. And so joy is arrived at indirectly. If you try to grasp it, it runs away from you. But it's there if you grasp one of these other two concepts, the fact that I am or the fact that I am always shining. That is, consciousness is self-luminous consciousness. Consciousness is self-luminous, that it is, it's self-aware. The sun doesn't need another light. The sun, if it wants to be aware of its own shining, it doesn't have to take a flashlight and shine back on itself to see itself. No, the sun is self-luminous. It illumines everything here, but it shines by itself in its own light. And so the self, consciousness is like that. Consciousness illumines all of our experience, but it's self-luminous. That's how I know that I am. It's because I'm self-luminous that I know that I am, that experience is always there. Again, the strange thing is that every thought arises, even now, even if you've never practiced this holding on to the I am and you don't know what it means and the whole thing is just incomprehensible mess to you, even then, all of your thoughts are arising in the sense that I am. Every perception that you have, you're perceiving inside of the I am. So that's one meditation, to hold on to the I am. Another is to hold on to consciousness, Sarabhami. And similarly, to sit and just be aware of the fact that everything appears within my consciousness. They actually come to the same thing. It's just that you shift your focus a little bit. So you sit and you're aware of the external world through sensations. Even if your eyes are closed, you have the sense of the world around you. In fact, that's a strange thing also, you know. when you begin to look at your own self subjectively, all truths are revealed there. You don't have to go anywhere else. Everything is revealed right here because the whole universe is inside of yourself. And so when you begin to look subjectively, you see that I always had the idea that there's this vast world, vast universe. Inside this universe, there's this one insignificant galaxy among billions of galaxies. In that galaxy, among billions of solar systems, there's this one insignificant solar system in one corner of that galaxy. And there, among several planets, people are arguing now over whether Pluto is or is not a planet, and whether there's another planet maybe that some are speculating about. But in that solar system, there's one planet called Earth. The Earth is a huge place compared to me, and on the Earth there's an insignificant individual among billions of people that is me, and then I'm inside of this body. No, the opposite is true. When you begin to think in this term, you sit quietly and think, okay, everything appears within my awareness. The world outside appears in my awareness. You see that you're aware of all of the space around you. Especially when you close your eyes, you become more aware of it. It's true now, but when you close your eyes, you're aware of the fact that the whole body appears inside of my awareness. I'm aware of the whole thing, but I'm aware of it inside my awareness. I'm aware of this. I'm aware of the bottom of my foot. I'm aware of my fingertips. Everything is inside of my awareness, and I have a sense of the world all around me. But then I begin to see that I perceive the world. The world is appearing within my consciousness. I'm aware of the world. Where? In consciousness, in my own consciousness. But I'm the seer, and the world is the object of my perception. I'm aware of this body. This body is floating in my awareness also. But I'm the light of awareness, and I'm illumining the body. But I'm the light. The body is that which is illumined. But then I come to my mind and my thoughts. My thoughts are arising. I see my thoughts, images, words, memories, etc., sensations, all of that's arising in my mind. But I'm the one who's looking at the mind. I'm looking at all of these thoughts and images and words and things arising in my mind. I'm the light which illumines all of that. And so it's not that I am this little flicker of consciousness hidden deep inside of a body, which is one among billions on a planet, etc., all the way up to the whole universe and galactic systems and maybe systems of universes, who knows. No, the fact is that everything appears within me. I can't perceive anything outside of myself, no matter where I go, what I see. When you begin to think this way, then many things happen. One of the things that happens is that you begin to realize that when I walk from here to over there, that I'm not going anywhere because I'm the light of awareness. This whole process of walking from one place to another, that's going on within me, or driving from one place to another, flying from one place to another, that's all happening within me. This body I'm perceiving as changing in relationship to other objects, but the whole thing takes place within me. And so Saurabh, I always shine. I begin to get that sense that, yes, I'm the light of awareness. What does that do for us immediately when we begin to think that way? It puts a wedge between us and our experience, which you might think might be frightening. It might lead to self-dissociation or something. No. If you do it properly, and it's not hard to do it properly, well, one of the things it does is that you begin to see the conditions of the body, those are not me. I may still suffer from them. I may not have been able to transcend them. I can't take the mind or my consciousness to a place where I no longer perceive the pain. I still feel pain. But now there's a wedge between the sense of self and that pain I experience. I begin to see that I feel pain, or I am experiencing pain. The pain is there, something which I, the light of awareness, am feeling. When the mind is sad or depressed, I begin to feel the mind is depressed, not I am depressed. How can I say I am depressed? I'm the light of experience itself. The light which illumines depression, the light which illumines joy, the light which illumines healing, and the light which illumines sickness. I'm the light itself. I have no sickness, I have no depression. I'm the light of joy which illumines everything. And so, even before you can actually transcend the experience itself, you get a sense of being separate from the experience and not completely consumed by it. There was a wonderful devotee of ours that some of you knew. She's been gone for many years up in Santa Barbara, Prasanna, Catherine Whitmarsh. In fact, Carl is related to her, Catherine Whitmarsh. She used to tell me, I used to go, whenever I would go to Santa Barbara in those days, I would go to see her, have tea with her. She used to tell me many times, she told me, that the only thing that helps with using her words, the only thing that helps with the extreme pain I have from advanced arthritis is the sense that I'm not the body. That's the only thing that helps with the pain. I've gotten to where the pain medications don't work properly anymore. The only thing that helps with the pain is still there, but I have the sense that that's not me. That's the only thing that helps, that gives me solace and gives me comfort and gives me freedom from the pain. And so that was a wonderful statement. So that begins to come to us. So one last thing let me say, and then I'll conclude. And that was, I'll use one other verse. I actually bought about 4 verses from that text, but one other I'll do and then close. Mayevo deti chid vyomni jagad Gandhara pattanam. Within me, Mai eva udeti. In me, the chid vyomni, in me, the space of consciousness. That is, I am the container of the universe. I am consciousness itself, in which all of this is contained. In me, the space of consciousness, Jagad Gandharva Pattanam, this universe which is like a palace in the sky appears, it rises, udeti. That is, this whole universe is compared to an appearance within the sky. And so when I begin to think in terms of consciousness, I see that this whole universe arises within me, who am the space of consciousness. Tohum Kaatham Brahma, then how can I not be Brahman? If the whole universe arises within me, how can I not be Brahman? Tohum Kaatham Brahma, Sarvagnyam, I who am all-knowing. Sarvagnyam Sarvakarnam, the cause of all. Now that may not be immediately evident, because Sarvagna here doesn't mean that suddenly I know nuclear physics and plasma physics and Swahili and Chinese and Japanese and organic biology and other subjects. No, but it means that I know the essence of everything. Whatever is a manifestation of that consciousness. Just as if I know clay, then I know that clay can take an infinite number of forms. I can't possibly know all of the possible forms of clay, because I could take clay and mold it, if I had time, into trillions of different forms, each different from the other, and then somebody could come along with a stick and poke a hole in each one of those forms, and you'd have that many more trillion forms that were made by that little alteration. And so I can't possibly know all of the actual forms that clay takes, but I know that all are clay. I know the essence of all of them, and I know the infinite capacity of clay to take on different forms. And so if I know consciousness, I know the essence of everything. There's nothing which arises in experience which is not a manifestation of consciousness. And so I know the secret of the universe. I know the secret of my own existence. And that's revealed in my experience right now. It's revealed in my experiences right now. I shine, and I'm dear to myself. That's revealed in my present experience, and that itself proves that I am Brahman. There are various other verses that go on and develop other aspects of this idea, but that's enough to give the idea that our present experience reveals all that needs to be revealed about the truth. It reveals the truth itself. It's just that we don't pay attention to the very facts of our own direct experience. Things that we're so used to, like our glasses, we're looking beyond the glasses at everything else. And of course, I have to say that I wouldn't want to spend all day looking at my glasses. That's not very interesting. But in the case of our self-existence, it is. It's bliss itself, it's joy itself, it's knowledge itself, wisdom itself, it's freedom itself. And so if I can begin to look at that, then I begin to experience a little bit of these others. And the intuitional promise, it becomes an experiential promise that yes, if I go far enough with this, then there's infinite freedom waiting for me, infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinite joy waiting for me. And so in conclusion, this is one path. Of course, I've did the path of non-dualistic Vedanta, the path of knowledge. There are other paths, but this is one beautiful path which I wanted to share a little bit of with you today. Om madhuvatarayate madhuksharanti sindhava madhvirna santoshadhi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyaurastu nafpita madhumando vanaspatir madhumagum astu suryaha madhvirgavo bhavandunaha. Om madhu, om madhu, om madhu. For us who seek the truth, and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day, sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Om, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness.